Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you're joining us for Storytime today, welcome. I'm happy to see you. If we haven't met yet, hi, my name is Miss Gemma. I do Storytime every Saturday right here at Barnes & Noble in Scottsdale, Arizona on Instagram. And I'm so excited to be joining you here for this official Barnes & Noble National Storytime today to bring you Peter Rabbit. Do you love Peter Rabbit? Have you ever read Peter Rabbit? I love his stories so much. They are so much fun to read. So I know that a lot of places around the country right now, some places are very, very cold. Some places are fairly warm, like here in Arizona. But wherever you are, I hope that we can bring a bit of springtime to you today. I've got all of my Peters around me here. We found a nice cozy spot in our woods. Nice cozy place to read stories. So come on, join us here. Get settled wherever you're at, wearing your socks, sitting on the floor, sitting at the kitchen table, in your bed, with somebody, by yourself, wherever you are at, get settled and cozy, because we have a fantastic story for you today. So this is The Classic Tale of Peter Rabbit. And the cool thing about this book is it actually has a bunch of different stories. But today we are just going to read the tale of Peter Rabbit. And if you loved it, then you can check out all of the other stories yourself, because they are definitely worth reading. So I've got a special surprise for you with this book. This version has a magic page right at the beginning. Wow! That is one big picture, isn't it? Let's take a look. Whoa, would you look at that? I would love to be right there. That looks like the most beautiful place to be. Especially if you're a bunny. Especially if you're reading a story. So here we go. Get all ready. Peter, are you ready? Yes. Okay. First, we skipped a page. Oh dear. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits. Let's count them together, shall we? 1, 2, 3, 4. Good job. And their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived together with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out." Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Can we count them together? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. Naughty Peter. First, he ate some lettuces and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. But round the end of a cucumber frame, who should he meet but Mr. McGregor. Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages, and the other shoe amongst the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have gotten away altogether if he had not, unfortunately, run into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Let's take a look at it. He's got this beautiful blue jacket with his brass buttons so shiny. Poor thing, he got it caught. Peter gave himself up for lost, shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows, who flew him into great excitement and implored him to exert himself. Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve, which he intended to pop on top of Peter, but Peter wriggled out just in time. Oh, this is quite an adventure. Look how big Mr. McGregor is compared to poor little Peter. I'd be awfully scared too. Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him, and rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not had so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. This one? No. How about this one? No, no Peter. Presently, Peter sneezed. Kerchoo! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time, and tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out a window, upsetting 3 plants. Can we count the plants? 1, 2, 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath, and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that can. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity-lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. I bet her cheeks were very puffed up with that inside. Can you puff up your cheeks like the mouse? Good job. Such a funny face. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently, he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched, as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the sound of a hoe. Scritch, scratch, scratch, scritch. Peter scuttled underneath the bushes, but presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. Peep. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go. Can you stamp your feet like you're running? Running as fast as he could go, along a straight walk behind some black currant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. Look at that big cat. Can you meow like a cat? Meow, meow. That was a good cat sound. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter. 1 tablespoonful to be taken at bedtime. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. Poor little Peter, all worn out from that crazy day. And that is the end. Peter, such a naughty little bunny. What were you thinking going into Mr. McGregor's yard, Did you like that story? I like that story very much. I hope you loved reading it with me. Make sure you don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden like Peter, or you won't get anything tasty for dinner. So thank you so much for joining me today for Storytime. I had a wonderful time with you. Say thank you to all the kids for coming, Peters. Thank you. So I hope that you are well. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next week on Barnes & Noble Storytime. Stay safe, keep reading, and until next time, bye-bye.